Hello, my fellow witches, sorcerers, and other magical practitioners. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be talking about closed practices. So, for those of you who don't know, closed practices are a very hot topic in the occult community. They are talked about quite a bit, and I think that it's time that someone makes a video about what they are and debunking a few myths about them. I won't be talking about specific closed practices because I think that could get me into hot water very quickly. But I will be talking about what a closed practice is, what a closed practice is not, and a few things that people confuse for closed practices. And I will also be talking a little bit about the dangers of calling everything a closed practice. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So what is a closed practice? Very simply, a closed practice is something that is initiatory. Any practice that is initiatory. That's it. That is the only requirement to be a closed practice. This includes several different things, but a lot of people specifically talk about voodoo, which I know nothing about, so I'm not going to even start talking about it. But that is a very prominent example of a closed practice that a lot of people know about. It is initiatory. You have to be initiated to be able to practice it. What does that actually mean? That means that without initiation, you know none of the rites, you know none of the processes, and you cannot interact with the spirits that the practice offers. And this is because you don't even know how to. It's less of, oh, you can't do this because out of respect. It's more of, you literally do not know how to do this without initiation, without proper training, without proper understanding. Respect does play a big part into it, but it's really more of, you literally do not know what you're doing if you are trying to practice these practices without initiation. And that brings us into what a lot of people confuse for closed practices. A lot of people think that closed practice means race locked. Race locked is a completely different thing from closed practices. Race locked means that only a specific group of people of a specific race can practice a certain religion, craft, whatever thing that it is. A good example of this would be Yazidism. Yazidism is race locked. You have to be born into it. And because of that, we don't really know, we can't really practice it. You literally cannot practice it because you're not born into it. You can't convert, you can't do anything to join into it. Whereas with closed practices, you can completely join them, you just need to be initiated. That's it. You need to find a way to be initiated into that practice, into that current, into that system. And a lot of people really misinterpret this. They really seem to think that you can't do anything with closed practices, which is a complete falsehood, complete misnomer, it's just wrong. There's no rule that says you cannot initiate into a closed practice if you want to, if you have that desire to. And then there's the other one, which is region locked. There are a few practices that are locked to specific regions. And I will say there's a very few amount of practices that are locked to specific regions. I would do research into that if you want to find out about those. But yes, so there's closed practices, there's race locked, and then there's region locked. These three things are very different from each other. Closed practice, initiatory. Race locked, born into it. Region locked, you have to live there. And I think that personally, calling everything a closed practice is really problematic. Telling people that they can't practice something because it's a closed practice is really ignorant. Because it comes from a place it does come from a place of respect, wanting to respect other people's practices, other people's religions, etc. However, telling people that you don't know and have no context of, that they can't talk about something, that they can't research something, that they can't do something, because it's a closed practice, is really ignorant. People can research closed practices if they want to. That's how they learn about them. That's how they get interested in them. That's how they go about traveling to initiation. Traveling to that point where, like, okay, I really want to do this, so I will initiate. Instead of telling people that they can't research something, encourage that research. Because the more we research about something, the more we understand it, and the more we can grasp it, and the more we can debunk misconceptions about it. A lot of people tend to think very negatively of certain closed practices, and I think that because we don't research them, we think negatively about them. So it's important to research them and think about them. Race-locked practices can also be researched, however, you cannot join them. If you're not of that race, if you're not born into it, whatever it may be. And I think that's something that's really important to notice. You can research these topics. It is okay to research them. It is okay to talk about them. You shouldn't shut someone down because they want to talk about a closed practice, a race-locked religion, or a region-locked practice. It is completely okay to talk about them, discuss them, and learn more about them. And I think that trying to block people out from them is really ignorant. It also ignores cultural exchange. Cultures interact with each other and they make exchanges with each other, and people learn from each other. It's natural and it's healthy. It is not erase practices, it is not erase culture, it's just how things grow and change over time. Because religion grows and changes over time. Practices evolve and change over time. This is a fact. And I think trying to say that cultural exchange does not happen, people are separated into those little boxes, is really harmful. And it really makes people feel like they can't do anything. They have to be of a specific practice. I know people who have gone DNA tests to figure out what practices they can do. And I think that's really, really harmful. People should be looking into things that they are interested in, that they want to learn about, and that work for them. There are very few race-locked practices, there are very few region-locked practices, and there are very few closed practices. The amount of things that are open to people is very large. And I think trying to call certain things closed practices that really aren't is dangerous. I think that we need to understand that just because something comes from a certain place that is not of your origin does not mean that it's closed to you. Research it, learn about it, figure out if it is closed, if it is race locked, if it is region locked. And if it is closed, figure out how you can initiate into it. Figure out the proper steps. If it's race locked, learn about it. Express your interest in it. But you don't need to you shouldn't be able to practice it, obviously. But it's okay to learn about it. If it's region locked, and you want to move to that place where it originates in, feel free to, if you have the money and all that stuff. All in all, I think it's just really important that we talk about these things, that we don't try to hide them away, brush them away, and not practice them for fear of offending someone. It's important to talk about these things. And it's important to talk about cultural exchange and how things evolve over time. And as someone who has his hand in multiple parts of different practices, I think that it's important to discuss different practices as a whole, so we can all learn from each other, so that we can all learn to grow as a community. So that's been my kind of spiel on closed practices. I hope you all enjoyed, I hope you all learned something. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.